What's cracking, listeners? This is ESPN 9, the book podcast. I'm your host, Michael Fiumefreddo, and alongside me, Nicholas Mattera.
Yo.
And Nicholas Fiocco. And Nick, I understand today's your birthday.
Yes, sir, it is.
And our special guest today, we have professional rower Dante Pascale looking to talk to us about a special book that we've been reading.
Yep.
It's called Oys In The Oat by Daniel James Brown, and it tells the story of the 1936 Olympic rowing team for the United States. And
Great
Nick,
piece
would you
of
like to
literature.
comment on that?
Well, I had a great time reading this book. It's a great book, great read. I recommend it to anyone who loves sports and learning life lessons through books.
Well, I felt that it's an excellent part of just American literature. It teaches kids about a sport that not a lot of people pay attention to. Has a lot of important life lessons for all of us.
And as a rower, I feel this is a great way to, get the sport out there because, it introduces many important life lessons and it tells a story through the eyes of an incredible young man named Joe Rance, and you live through the story and how rowing saved him and personally how it saved me.
And now, we've asked our listeners to come up with some questions, and here we have two very interesting ones from Stevie G, a longtime listener from Montauk, New York. His first question was, in what ways are the specifics of rowing, the technique, the boats, the teamwork required, metaphors for what the boys, particularly Joe, learn about life and friendship over the course of the novel?
Solid question, Stevie G. Solid question.
Yeah, very good question, Steve.
So, in my opinion, the whole thing with rowing is you gotta think as a boat. As it says many times in the book, you gotta move as one. It talks about the concept of swing, which is constant motion together. It's when you row and it syncs up perfectly, and it's just one community, and you're one entity and being as one in the boat. And it's not a self-centered thought of, how am I rowing? It's, a connection between all the boys in the boat.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
In your professional experience, how do you feel swing motivates you? Like this concept of swing, how does it motivate you to do better? Do you do better for yourself, or do you do better for a team?
Well, it's a very much team aspect, and that's a great question, Nick.
Thank you.
And so the swing, you go into the team knowing, right? And as you get closer with your boatmates and your boys out there, the boys in the boat, you start to develop a chemistry and a connection, and you start to get a feel. You know how they row. You know everything about these men. These men are your boys in the boat.
Yeah, and especially in that one part of the book when Joe was taken out of the first boat and their times were significantly slower than when Joe was in the boat. Although Joe was one of the lesser rowers of importance on that team, he needed to be in that boat to help them go as fast as they did and win the gold.
I totally agree with Michael.
It's a mentality.
I think that Dante and Michael are totally right in thinking that teamwork was a huge part of this book. Reading it, it's all about teamwork. Even though Joe wasn't the most experienced or best rower, he made a significant difference in his team by knowing them and trusting them through being boys in the boat.
Now, well, if you don't mind, I do have another follow-up question for you, Mr. Pascale. Now, to connect both worlds between book and reality, or at least the modern times, do you feel that this concept of family in your boat, do you feel like that you can at least relate to how the characters feel in the book and their sense of community?
Oh, definitely. It happened to me when I first joined my rowing team at Zavarian High School. I knew no one, Go Clippers, the Armada, the harbor. So anyway, when I was in the boat, it was a complete different experience than, where I'm at right now with me and my boatmates. We are all so close.
I thought the term was boat boys.
Boys in the boat. So, it's a real sense of, family, and you rely on each other. These guys, when you're out there, no one is self-centered. It's not a thought of, am I doing good? It's a complete, you give your body to the team.
Give the body to them.
Well, can I also add one more
thing? You think
thing?
as one.
One more thing until we go on to our second question. Especially around this time when Adolf Hitler was taking over, they had
Well, he was in power at this time. This
Yeah,
was
yeah.
his whole show.
Yeah,
this
I
was,
know.
This
This
was
was his boat.
This was his boat. No, but in a way, this was his boat because this was was his way to
the
prove to the world that
all
that Germany was civilized.
I know, but like it shows that all the boys in the boat, they got over this rough time.
All right.
By being together.
Great
All right,
analysis.
Nick, we're gonna have to stop you there. But Stevie G just tweeted me saying that he had another question
From Montauk.
From Montauk.
Montauk.
He must be having a great time up there.
Waitering.
So he says rowing is a sport that is heavily affected by the weather, from heat waves to blizzards to strong winds. Daniel Brown uses historical weather conditions to add context to various races. In what way does the weather he describes mirror the character's internal thoughts or feelings?
For those
Wow.
listening, Daniel Brown is the author.
So Dante, I just wanted to ask you, what was the worst weather you've rode in or have had to deal with?
Definitely Hurricane Irma.
Intriguing.
No,
I'd
yeah,
like to hear the story.
So no, it's just the weather was really bad. The waters were very choppy. I mean, it was raining. It was a torrential downpour. You know, our boat almost got capsized multiple times. It was very tough to stay up and outright out there.
How does the wind affect your progression through the water? Because it seems like I can understand currents, but when you're rowing, how does wind even make sense? Do you have a sail? Like,
No, there's no sail when the boys are in the boat.
oh, I see.
Think
So,
about it this
yeah.
way. The boys rode up at Washington University. Go Huskies. They and the Huskies. It's a and there's pretty bad weather there, but obviously
Yeah,
that
Seattle.
would definitely help them when they had to come up to New York and eventually Berlin. And rowing in those conditions definitely made it easier and the easier events that they had to face.
Well, ultimately, I believe that the weather conditions that Brown talks about is talking about life lessons in general. He's
all a
talking about
metaphor.
when the weather comes, when the storm comes and pounds you and your boys in the boat. You gotta get through it. You gotta work together to
Power
get through
through.
it. You gotta power
It's a
through.
teamwork mentality.
It's a teamwork mentality. Dante is totally right. And the weather conditions is just a setback that you have to get through to win in life.
and that's definitely a metaphor for Joe's life. He dealt with deaths in the family,
Yes.
not having a job, needing to get money, and still balancing his time as a rower.
So how do you-
Wait, getting back to
Oh,
Stevie
sorry.
G's question about you know, how it mirrors the characters and internal thoughts and feelings of Joe Rance, you know, it really it talks about how rough his life is, and he was he was a close person. He was going through a lot. Like, his dad didn't want him. Thula was, you know, very mean. She was a terrible stepmother. She didn't want her son at all.
Usually are.
Yeah. But anyway, so really it was him dealing with the personal storm, and it was just like the weather out there in Seattle. It was raining all the time. I mean, it was dreary for him, and not only him, but you know, the physical world and the weather, like that sense.
So Dante, do you ever see yourself? Can you ever picture yourself in this position where you're with the boys in the boat, and you're Joe Rance, and you're in the boat, and you guys are perfectly swinging in motion, and you're looking next to you, and you see people catching up, falling behind? What would your thought process be?
You just got to remember to, you know, stay faithful. You know, you can't get anxious and on edge and uneasy and think, oh man, I got to pick up tempo. No, you don't do that. Like it says in the book, how, you know, when they're in the races, they were falling behind. Like, because you're in swing, because you work together so well and you click so well, you're able to just remain at that low 30s pace, and because you're so efficient with your strokes, you don't need to keep up a higher stroke rate. So you can you know, you can have your powerful reserves, like, you know, you can last longer, and you can save it for the end. So at the end of the race, you can be in swing and rowing up and upwards of about 40, you know, rows per minute. So that way you'll just be flying in the water.
Well, I totally agree with Dante. Like, I've watched a few rowing events in the Olympics in the past few years, and it's all about teamwork. You know, you totally gotta row, and they're all in sync. They're totally in sync. If they're not in sync, they're not
Just
gonna
like the
win.
band.
They just exactly.
We miss you.
They gotta be in sync.
Okay.
So,
Well, I guess that's all the time we have for today.
Thank you, Stevie G, for your wonderful questions
and
as
thank
always.
you, Dante, for
Thank
being
you, Dante.
here.
No problem. One final
we
happy
don't-
birthday to Nick Fiocco.
Oh,
All right,
thanks,
we'd also
thanks.
like to thank our listeners for listening, and we want to ask you guys which book we should read next. And I guess we'll see you next time on ESPN 9, the book podcast. Have a great night.
Stay classy, San Diego.